All right, let's dive right in. A massive tax overhaul is happening in India, and it's about to put some serious money back into the pockets of millions. If you're even remotely thinking about getting a new vehicle, trust me, this is news you cannot afford to miss.
So let me just ask you straight up. Are you, or maybe someone you know, thinking about buying a new car or a new bike anytime soon? If the answer is yes, you're going to want to lean in and listen very, very closely to what's coming next.
Because that dream vehicle you've had your eye on, well, it just got a whole lot cheaper. And listen, this isn't some temporary festival discount we're talking about. Nope. This is a fundamental, game-changing shift in how vehicles are taxed here in India.
That's right, we're talking about a major price drop. The Indian government, through the GST Council, has just rolled out one of the biggest tax reforms for the auto sector in years. So, the big question is, what exactly has changed?
Well, essentially, we've gone from this incredibly complicated maze of different taxes and cesses, which could push the total tax on a car to nearly 50%, to a much, much simpler, streamlined two-slab system. It's all about making things clearer and, most importantly, more affordable for you.
And the scale of this change is just, wow. Just take a look at the mass market segment. We're talking small cars, motorcycles up to 350cc. Their GST rate has literally plummeted from 28% all the way down to 18%. That is a massive 10% drop. And for luxury cars, even though the new rate is 40%, the old system had this huge 22% cess slapped on top of the 28% GST, so the effective tax rate there has also dropped quite a bit, from around 50% to a much more manageable 40%.
Okay, so percentages are one thing, but what does that actually mean for your wallet? Let's put it into perspective. On a pretty typical mid-size car that used to cost around 12 lakh rupees, the savings could be as much as 1,80,000 rupees. I mean, that is a huge, tangible difference you can feel.
But, a change this massive doesn't just happen overnight. This decision was actually the result of years and years of the auto industry pleading for a more rational tax system. So what was their main argument all this time?
Well, the industry was basically pointing out two huge problems. First, the old tax structure was just making cars and bikes way too expensive. It was hurting affordability and, of course, slowing down sales. And second, there was this really weird classification issue. Essential items for mobility, like a basic 150cc motorcycle, were being taxed at the exact same high rate as sin goods like tobacco. It just didn't make sense.
And Venu Srinivasan from TVS, he really hit the nail on the head with this. He asked, why should a vehicle that gets millions of people to work every single day be taxed at the same punishing level as a luxury good? It was a really powerful argument about fairness and just basic economic common sense.
So, given that long history, it is absolutely no surprise that when the announcement finally came, the reaction from the entire auto sector was just overwhelmingly positive. We're talking a universal wave of applause from the companies that make the most affordable bikes to the ones that build the most premium luxury cars.
Let's start with the undisputed king of the small car market, Maruti Suzuki. Their chairman, R.C. Bhargava, immediately pointed out what a huge boost this would be for small, affordable cars, which, let's be honest, are the real backbone of the Indian auto industry.
And that exact same feeling was echoed over in the two-wheeler world. Sudarshan Venu of TVS said this makes basic mobility way more accessible for first-time buyers, and it also helps that growing middle class upgrade to newer, safer vehicles.
And get this, it wasn't just a win for the mass market. The feeling was completely mutual even in the high-end luxury segment. Santosh Iyer from Mercedes-Benz pretty much said, hey, the government finally listened to us. It just goes to show there was a broad agreement that a simpler system really does lift the entire market.
But you know what? Maybe the most critical thumbs up came from the supply chain itself. Shraddha Suri Marwa from the Auto Component Manufacturers Association pointed out that having a single, uniform 18% rate for parts is a game changer. It helps small businesses, it encourages better quality and safety, and it basically cleans up the whole ecosystem.
Okay, so this is obviously fantastic news for car buyers and the auto industry, but it's also part of a much bigger picture. This move is actually a key piece of the government's wider economic strategy.
And before we jump into that grand vision, it's probably worth a quick reminder of who actually makes these huge calls. The GST Council is this joint body with the central finance minister and the finance ministers from all the states. It's really a perfect example of India's federal structure in action, making these key tax decisions together.
So, what's the grand strategy here? Well, it kind of boils down to three key things. First, you boost consumer spending by making things more affordable. Second, you strengthen local manufacturing by creating more demand. And third, you create a simpler, more transparent tax system that hopefully benefits everyone.
And this quote from the Revenue Secretary just sums up the whole economic philosophy perfectly. The key word here is buoyancy. The idea is that by lowering tax rates, the government can spark so much more economic activity that the total tax collection actually goes up. It's about growing the entire economic pie, not just slicing it up differently.
So, with prices down and the industry totally energized, what does the future actually hold? This reform isn't just about what's happening today. It's really setting the stage for the next big chapter of mobility in India.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap the new reality, the new lay of the land. We now have 3 very clear lanes for vehicle taxes. A super low 5% for EVs to really push for adoption, a broad 18% for the mass market to drive sales volume, and then a 40% slab for luxury cars. Just having this clarity is a massive step forward.
Now, this is so important. In all the excitement about the tax cuts, what didn't change is maybe the biggest story of all. Shailesh Chandra of Tata Motors points out that the council very deliberately kept the GST on electric vehicles at that super low 5%. And that sends a crystal clear signal that the push for green mobility is still a top priority.
Which, of course, leads to a fascinating question. With regular cars getting cheaper, the government has made sure that EVs still have a major tax advantage. So, could this careful balancing act be the final catalyst, the final push we've been waiting for to truly kickstart the mass adoption of electric vehicles in India?
And that leaves us with one last massive thought to chew on. We have a more affordable market, a fired-up industry, and a clear policy direction. All the pieces seem to be in place. The question now is, are we standing on the edge of the biggest automotive boom in India's entire history? The stage is set, and it feels like the engines are just starting to rev.